Yeah. And then Smithfield Town Council sitting as the Municipal Building Review Task Force, which is discussion, vote, or other action on update tech regarding the Smithfield Police Station. So thanks for joining us tonight. I appreciate it last minute. I know when I sent the email, just kind of give you a quick summary that the actual NBRTF did resign after the election. So right now the town council is sitting as the actual NBRTF until we can bring other people on board. So we just haven't had an update. So we just wanted to see what the update was on the repairs that were approved to go forward with and where we go from there.
Okay. Again, a little bit of an echo.
I think it's because we have it going in the room, so.
Okay.
Because we're doing it in the back room, but we also have to put it out to the public too, so I think that's why.
So I'm seeing a screen for the council chambers, but all I'm getting is lines across it.
Can I use that microphone or no? I think that's where the feedback is coming from, possibly.
It might be microphone.
Yes. Did that mess anything up on your end?
Are all the microphones silenced?
Yeah, we usually have so much feedback for those people who are sitting in the audience. So this is the best way to try and minimize it. But if you can't hear us, that's not.
CJ, let us know if there's an echo.
Well, it is better now, I think.
Is that better?
I think so.
All the mics are done. It was muted in the other room, so hopefully that we can see the echo.
Okay, let's go.
Were you able to hear what I asked of you? Or?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I did. I heard it, and then when I started speaking, I was hearing myself back. Okay, so I just pulled together some quick PDF, and I can share this with you, just with like some updates relative to the project. I pulled in a few progress photos, just so you guys can see some of the work being done, as well as I think
So you guys can hear okay.
at the end of the document, I also included, I think you asked the question on what other renovations or repairs potentially the council should consider. Do you want me to kind of hold off on that piece? Because we did start to kind of jot down some ideas.
Yeah, so let's just get updates on what we actually approved, and then if there's any other lists that are out there, or any other wants or needs that you guys have already looked at or know about.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Well, you guys get my email over this.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so current status of the immediate repairs. So all of the abatement, asbestos abatement work has been completed. The front exterior wall has been internally stabilized and braced. So that abatement work was necessary to build that brace wall, so that's been complete. The ramp repairs, the front ramp and the rear fire escape repairs are also complete. The replacement door has been ordered. It had a long lead time, so it was ordered when we first started. We are still waiting on an expected installation date for that door. The destructive exploration on that front brick facade has begun. We actually got the first photos today, and the structural engineers will be out on site as well as a member of our team to do a visual kind of inspection of those kind of areas that we took off the front white to see what was happening internally to that front exterior wall. So kind of based on that visual inspection, an alternate will be recommended. So how it was packaged from a bidding standpoint is that there were a few options based on what we found when we opened up that brick wall of potential remedies. So that selection of an alternate will need council approval. So I kind of flagged anything that would need future time-sensitive approval. That would be one of them. So we'll have to give them the contractor direction on which alternate, kind of which repair would be needed to that front exterior wall. And then the roof repairs and the reconstruction of the parapet wall is tied to that selected alternate. So from the contractor's point of view, he's fixed the roof ladder that accesses that roof, but he's waiting to do the actual roof repairs and the parapet reconstruction until we had a better idea of what we were doing with the front exterior wall. So that is the general status of each immediate repair item. Is there any questions, or do you have any additional? I can show some photos that you sent. So this was the repair to the ramp, some of the abatement work, repair to the rear fire escape. These are some photos of the exterior breaks of the internal brace wall or that front exterior facade. You can see that on the main level here. And then these were some of the fresh photos from today where they started to explore that multi-white brick construction to gauge how deep that damage went.
So, when you say alternate facade recommendations, what potential alternates are there? And then the next question would be to follow up on that. The repairs to the roof, has there been anything to prevent immediate infiltration of water, or what has been done to date?
Yes. I don't know about that. It wasn't involved in their package.
Okay.
So,
The chief is here. I don't know if you.
Yep, I can see him. I heard it say yes.
about 3 years ago, I got approval for repair to the leak that was the active leak that was going into the building. So I contacted the contractor that was involved with the bonding. And they came out with the immediate fix, the blistering holes along the patch that you access the roof with, and there were a few other holes. It was like, off the top of my head, 22, 24 pounds.
So that is now basically keeping the building.
We haven't had any, we haven't had the water that, like, the actual, like, stream water that's coming down. I don't know, because we haven't, usually in the winter, or the spring melt, we'll get leaks from the roof drains into the cell area where the drains come down and they empty out the back parking lot. That was another one of those repairs that the trust fund fixed, so we had to cut those drops from the roof drains and divert them out towards where the generator is, towards Stop and Shop. But yeah, so that's the roof that's been done. The repair roof, the subcontracting roof part of that bid would be bond, I think, Tech Time will correct me if I'm wrong. And more to do with repairing the roof where the front facade hits the roof and that flashing coating and stuff. So that's how I see it.
It's a little bit more than that, Chief. It also, we look at anywhere where they're flashing in to units and as well as the perimeter. So it's not just the front wall, but it's anywhere where you get some flashing issues that are opened up.
Okay.
And to answer the first part of that question, I just pulled up the drawing set so it would be maybe a little easier to explain. The two options for the front brick wall repair. So the base bid essentially involves, this indicates, I'm just going to zoom in here, so hopefully that you can kind of see what I'm referring to. So these little squares here, if you can see my cursor, is where they did that destructive testing. So they would replace the brick that they removed, and then they would do basically helical ties throughout the entire height of that exterior wall. So those helical wall ties will
entire front?
Yes.
So
This entire portion right here in the middle, but full height.
okay.
Yep. That's great. Yep. And then the second alternate would be removing that exterior white if it was extremely damaged and couldn't be remedied with just the helical ties, and basically rebuilding a substitute in its place, which would consist of basically a stud construction on the outer portion of the two whites of brick that were to remain. And then that would be finished with siding.
And when do you get the results of how the wall came out?
So our structural engineers will be on site tomorrow. So we should have their, kind of their opinion on which alternate would be needed to structurally stabilize that wall. Pretty immediately following that. So the action for the selected alternate, would need to occur soon after.
Okay.
I would imagine by next week we would want to be giving some direction, if possible, to the contractor after the holiday.
Okay.
So would this be additionally to the original bid that they had?
Yes, if this alternate was to be selected, Jeff, I do not know the number. I'm imagining you don't know the recall, but
Alternate numbers were included, I
Yeah,
believe, in the,
Yeah, I've got 35,000, 95,000, and 45,000. So alternate one would be 35, alternate two, framing, sheathing, metal siding, related work, 95,000, and any frame the top of the ramp and different drawings as they're indicated here for the product.
yeah, so
That
if we're able to do the helical anchors, then we should be able to get a credit on the 95,000, because we won't be tearing that off and rebuilding all of that, so that would be a cost we would not incur. That might open up a little bit of possibilities, as we talk to Bond and structural engineering, we may be able to parlay that into a better conclusion at the end, but we've got to wait for that feedback to know that for certain.
So after that piece is done, what's the next big area, or is that it that we're waiting on right now?
Well, it would be
the roof.
the remainder of the roof repairs.
Okay.
So when you say roof repairs, is that actually fixing the roof in its entirety, or?
No, it's focused on the penetration and the specific, visual damage that was noted, but they're mostly around the penetrations, whether it be a unit or, other type of penetration. And it also is extensively reflashing and rebuilding the parapet wall, which is the top of this exterior, where this exterior wall meets the roof. That is what is included here, but it's not a roof replacement.
So do you see any visible signs other than what the chief had mentioned about having that area repaired? Do you see any visible signs right now of water infiltration coming from the roof?
There are lots of potential openings in that flashing. I got to some of them led to what created the brick problem in the first place, but I don't know how long. I can't say for certain how long they've been there. I think all the flashing looks suspect. Quite frankly, I'm a little bit surprised that you don't have more ongoing leaks, but that's, I don't know. They may have done two roofs, which happens sometimes where you do a roof over a roof, so we may be getting some protection.
as, well, I think Jeff, what is it, beyond 50% of the, of that component system or building, you then have to bring it up to current code. But if you stay under that threshold, you do not. It's existing non-compliance. The work you do has to be up to current code, but you don't have to fix everything and bring everything up. I think that was something we were keeping in mind with some of these recommendations, because if you go over that threshold requiring full code compliance, it would be extensive. The one that we discuss commonly is the lateral loading. So having to structurally reinforce the building would be quite costly. So I think we were trying to keep under that threshold when thinking about some of these renovations or repairs.
So under the current building code, police stations, fire stations, hospitals are risk level 4, which means that these are the buildings that need to have the most physical protection against natural events or to be most resilient. And that means that when we think about, there's a lot of different loads that impact the building, but one of the important ones that comes to play out of risk category 4 is the lateral loading. Those are the things like winds and storms and hurricanes and earthquakes that create movement in the building. And what you got is a load-bearing brick building that would not, in all likelihood, I can almost guarantee it would not meet the risk level 4 requirements for lateral loading. So if we were to engage in renovations to that building that triggered the need to bring it fully up to code, then that's going to be an extensive repair. We have some buildings that we're doing now where we're building what's called shear walls, where we're building new walls and cutting out the floors and putting in foundations to create the lateral bracing. So it's pretty significant work. So the repairs that we're trying to talk about on this list are trying to, just basic repairs that don't trigger that full code conformance. I think the insurance, when they wrote that letter, in many cases, if you have an existing building asset, you're not doing a change of use, and you're not doing extensive repairs that trigger full code compliance, there is no need, from a code standpoint, to bring it into full compliance with the new code. You get grandfathered for all intents and purposes.
Okay. So some of those interior renovations that may be worth considering. One was
Rebecca,
yeah.
on my screen, the shared document is very tiny. I don't know if that's happened to other people's screens.
Can everyone else read my document, or is it too tiny?
No, we can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. It was fine before, but now after the council chambers came back in, it went tiny on me. So I have a copy, so go ahead.
Okay. So a few of those targeted interior renovations, that's what we're kind of phrasing it as. So a few of these first ones are actually tied to the water infiltration that has probably occurred over time. So any repainting, mold removal, masonry repairs on the interior of the building, especially down to the lower level, ceiling replacement, ceiling tiles specifically, flooring also. So there's some flooring that had some damage, so kind of replacing those more finished type components. A few of the other ones that we flagged, again, depending on the extent of the renovation, would be the non-compliant internal stair, which is where the potential detainee is brought in. The ramp, non-compliant internal ramp on that lower level. So it's basically too steep, and it is a safety hazard. So that was something we flagged right away. A few of the other ones that potentially could be considered is creating site sound separation within the detention area. That one might be a little harder to accomplish, but it may require some partitions, but from a risk standpoint, may be considered.
the floor tiles and like ceiling tiles, all this stuff that's kind of, I don't want to say cosmetic, but.
It is.
It is, but.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, has any of it been tested for asbestos, like floor tiles specifically?
Yes, so that was, so that leads me right to the next one. So there is if you look at the previous report, when the project was initially bid from an abatement standpoint, when it was coupled with the town hall, they had an extensive report in there that documented a lot of the materials within the station that contained asbestos. Our report built on that and was specific to our area of focus. But if you look at both, that has a pretty good list of what items within the station are asbestos containing. One example is the flooring in that fitness area is 9x9 tile. That's all asbestos containing material. So you could probably take that report, or we could take that report, and you could just take that list of items and you could have a good sense of what would need to be abated. You have all that. You definitely have that material available if you wanted to create a list of what needed asbestos abatement.
Okay.
And then the last piece was just a few system upgrade recommendations. I think again, this is very dependent on the extent of like the renovation or repairs. I think our recommendation would be to focus on items that are at the end of its useful life / provide more resiliency. So things could be kind of at the end of their useful life, but still functioning. So it's really preparing for, their replacement prior to anything going down. A few things that I just wanted to highlight. And there are additional recommendations. Replacing all of the distribution piping is very extensive. So I didn't include those items on this list. But considering replacing the detention plumbing fixtures, a lot of them are corroded or showing signs of corrosion, and that could potentially translate to a risk to a detainee. Fire protection, obviously adding a fire protection system or a sprinkler system to the building, again, is extremely expensive. It is currently not protected, so from a resiliency standpoint, I wanted to mention it. The other thing that was mentioned by our engineers was that potentially expanding your boiler plant. Your boiler is actually in pretty good shape, but providing some redundancy and backup was a potential recommendation in case a piece of equipment goes down.
Yes. Can I just pose a question? One thing that jumped out at me that you said earlier is, I don't know if I understood correctly, but are you saying that the building could not withstand or possibly could not withstand a Category 3 or Category 4 hurricane?
What I'm saying is the building as it stands today, very likely does not meet the current code for what we would build a new police station to. It's hard for me to say what level of storm or what event would cause damage to it, but I'm just saying that it doesn't meet the current code for how you build police stations. So if we had done a new police station, that building would have been designed to that resiliency standard. An existing building, particularly one of this age, was not designed to that same standard.
So if the police are in there, and it doesn't happen that often around here, but it does happen. If the police were in there during such an event, there's a possibility they wouldn't be secure or safe in that building at the time?
There is a possibility. I don't want to try to overstate it, but the code was changed to increase the resiliency of these buildings.
So it's similar to having a house built like mine in 1970, and the one that we're going to build today will have right?
Yeah, absolutely. When I built my house, I don't know, which was 7 years ago, there are new codes for housing that require some lateral support. So any building, the codes have changed and become more stringent to make them more resilient. It just so happens police stations, fire stations, hospitals have the highest standards.
Yeah, that makes sense too. May I ask one more? How about the cells? We haven't mentioned the cells at all.
You did mention, creating a site sound separation or exploring that. You know, the cell fronts, the cell in general, we don't do cells like that because of the potential risk of self-harm by a detainee. We try to make them with less risk. The town has a custodian, particularly through the police department, has what they call a custodial responsibility, which means it's the police department's job to make sure that those detainees are safe. That's why they're required to do cell checks. And if you have a more current cell design, there is less opportunity for detainees to do self-harm within the facility. So it's a risk. There's certainly a liability, such a liability there. If somebody does harm, you know, you can mitigate it by taking actions of, you know, watching the detainees and checking them often, or you could consider redoing your cells and getting a safer design. One of the things that we do in our cell designs is we make higher ceilings in our new cells, and the reason is that light fixtures, cameras, all of those things that stick out of the ceiling are opportunities, and if nobody can reach them, then they can't affix anything to them that they could use to do self-harm.
Next question.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for all the information. It's been extremely helpful so far. So I just have a question. So it sounds like in listening that more repairs are probably needed, at least in the short and the long term. And I know some of these weren't bidded on, just given the nature of focus on addressing just the immediate concerns. But I guess the question I have is, one, if the council so chooses, would you or Tecton be willing to stay on if the council chooses to help with the MBIT office to help in a transition? And two, I think and this is probably more for the council, but I think we need to wrap our heads around what is the next steps of this building. What path are we going to choose? Because it sounds like the longer we wait, it's more money from either option, but I think we need to determine where we should be spending the dollars, whether it's heading down a rehab route and doing significant, because I'm assuming that 50% is not cheap, and we should figure out what that number is going to be, because otherwise we're just putting Band-Aid and kicking the can down.
Yeah, I mean,
Whatever option we choose, if we could go back out to the voters.
if I were going to emphasize anything, you know, right now, the first best way to spend money on this building would be to replace the roof in its entirety, as opposed to just doing the repairs, which, you know, it's not too late to stop the repairs, I think, and consider doing a whole new roof. But, you know, it's been my opinion for some time that was what led to the deterioration of the brick facade. As far as whether we can continue or not, it's going to depend on the scope and the timing. You know, we have taken on some additional work, and we want to make sure that we can deliver for all of our clients, including you, if we move forward. So, and be happy to have discussions about what and when and how we go about that. But I do need to be realistic about the staffing utilization as well.
Yeah, and I understand. The one thing that, I guess a follow-up to that is, if replacing the roof, and I know, again, the focus was on the bond question was moving out there and seeing what the voters are going to say in terms of the price tag enough. But, you know, we'd also heard at the time that it was years. Do you think in hindsight we probably should have looked at least in this bid, to hedge ourselves in the event that that bond did fail as it did, that we should have looked at having a full-out roof repair option there as well, just so we could have fully understand those costs?
I think there were a couple of things driving the decision not to do that. First, was concern about the availability of funds, and second, about the anticipation that there was a new building. Would it have been a good idea? It might well have been a good idea to have that option.
Just interject, but in the analysis that you did originally that was to replace the roof in whole.
I mean, in the addition renovation option we did a while ago, yeah, there would have been a new roof on that. I mean, within that option, we would have done all of the significant repairs that we've talked about, while doing that. I mean,
Yeah, because we're still, debating this and whatnot. We don't want them to be in an unsafe environment, right? And even if we went out next week to bid and it was approved by voters, they'd still be in that building for 16, 18, 24 months. So we want to make sure we take care of this.
yeah.
I guess while I have you guys on the line too, another question I have as we're debating next steps. The idea of a phased construction that never really came up in conversations, but do you do any work related to phased construction, whether maybe you build a piece of it now, but the rest of it is supported, whether it's a second floor or it's an addition down the line, 10, whatever, how many years later is needed to kind of keep cost controlled, while at the same time leaving it open that if it needed to expand upon it could? Because I know a lot of times, the conversation is, well, we wish we had more storage space, or we wish we had that. But is that ever an area where you see in these types of buildings as well?
Yeah, it's not something that, trying to think of an example where I might have done that in the past, and I can't think of one off the cuff, but it is something that I threw out as a possibility in our very last meeting. I do think there was some communication that went around town that I said that you could renovate the entire building and make it a proper police facility for a smaller amount of money, and I did want to clarify that what I actually said is that you could do the substantial repairs to the building for a smaller amount of money. It did not include full renovation to meet police scope. So, what you're asking is a possibility. It can be done. I think in the long term, the question is it cost benefit? It does the one thing of giving you small chunks, but it also means that costs are going to escalate over time, so you could end up spending more on it than if you've done it all at once.
I think the other thing that,
Escalation piece.
I think another aspect to that conversation when it comes to it, adding on in the future and kind of a phased approach is where you're planning to add on. And I think that was a part of some of our discussions. Where if it's a horizontal addition, you need the space from a site standpoint planned for that. If it's a vertical addition, we have found it challenging if you plan for, to add a second story, is ensuring that you're building enough into that structure to potentially be able to still meet that future code that you'll have to build to. So that can always be a challenge, is that you might be able to add vertically today, but that code's going to continue to change as time goes on. So, making sure that if you were to add vertically, that you're really planning for that.
Yep, that makes sense.
And I do want to clarify one thing about the existing building. And, I think one of my engineers said it when we were first out there looking at the building. It's a nice old building, and I agree with that. The challenge that we've had with that, with meeting the expanded scope of the full police station program, is the condition of the building, the physical conditions, the repairs, the fixes that need to be made, and the multiple levels. Because for making a full building handicap accessible and easy to utilize, all of those tiered levels create a lot of challenges and inefficiencies in the solution. So, if you were going to make that building into something else, I don't know, offices, or you may not face the same challenges you would with making it a police station. And, again, I think some people have a connection, whether it's an emotional connection or, sort of a memory connection to that building. I've never said that, the building isn't worthwhile. It's just challenging as a police station. That's something you have to think about, particularly if you're going to go to a phased approach and maintain that use.
Anyone have any more questions? what day would work for you next week that we could, jump back on a Teams and go over what the, report is from your, engineers, your structural engineers?
I'm pulling up our calendars right now. So we do have we have an evening commitment on Tuesday, I believe. But Jeff, I'm not seeing too much other than that.
At present, that's the only evening event I'm seeing.
So, if it was around the same time as this meeting, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, I would say later half of the week would be preferred, just because of the holiday. I want to make sure I have time to pull everything together and get, for them to get the engineer's feedback tomorrow, or the day after, so probably Wednesday or Thursday or Friday.
You do have a long
Do you have meetings every other Tuesday for the project itself?
Yes, yep, we have. Say that again, Chief?
I don't know if any of the council wishes to be part of those meetings, construction meetings, every other Tuesday that could be added. And it's during the day, right?
That's the one, those are the ones at 9:30.
Yeah, but it's a virtual, kind of an OAC, owner, architect, and contractor meeting, just to make sure we keep, but the representative of the owner is more than welcome, just to keep, we just make sure that we're keeping on schedule and getting updates.
Right.
On progress.
Just Thursday, the 30th, works for everyone?
Yeah, as long as there's a plan one meeting is that.
So as long as we do it at 5:45, I think, be done by 7. Would Thursday, the 30th work for you at 5:45?
Yeah, fine. Okay. At what point, I want to make sure that you have all this material ahead of time to review. What is your typical procedure for materials provided ahead of time?
If you could, do you have Joanne's email address?
I do.
So if you could just send everything to Joanne, and then she can send it out to all of us, and that way
Okay.
we'll all have it. Yeah, that would be perfect.
Yep, I'll put a package together then.
Yeah, so we can have it a few days before Rebecca to review it.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, perfect.
By Tuesday, be acceptable?
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Anyone else have anything before we go? All right, thank you so much for your time, we appreciate you jumping on the call.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bye, happy holiday.
Bye, you as well.
You too.